It's Build Week.
Yeah, it's the most wonderful time. Well, it used to be. I think we have to go back to when it was actually called PDC for that to be true. But
Yeah, back when Windows was, I think you got to go like
relevant.
pre-cloud days. Back when Windows was the focus of the company.
Well, I mean, even when Windows 8 was a thing, it was terrible. I mean, that's actually when Build started, I think,
Yeah,
or
actually, I think you're right.
somewhere around there. Um, it became annual. That Windows was still deemed to be important. I mean, what they were doing, they spent a lot of time on it. It was the focus or part of the focus.
Hmm. You know what
Oh
is the
well.
most wonderful time of the year, Paul Thurrott?
Mm-hmm.
Fortran Alert Logic, because they are sponsoring today's podcast episode, and Fortran Alert Logic offers the most comprehensive managed detection and response coverage for public cloud, software as a service, on-premises, and hybrid environments. To learn more, go to alertlogic.com or find links in the description of this podcast.
I was just laughing at the screenshot I took of you earlier.
So we had a minor technical thing that a
Sure.
reboot fixed, but
It wouldn't be a podcast without technical issues. It's Monday. This stuff was sitting idle for a couple of days. That's what happens.
yeah, I mean, that is the
Technology rot
reality
is
of it.
real.
Yes. Speaking of things that happened, that technically didn't happen over the
Speaking
weekend.
of
I guess,
rot, yeah.
late last week, this 37th country approved
So
Microsoft acquisition of
I was
Activision.
clearly off my game when I wrote that, because I meant that to be a lot more sarcastic than I wrote. And let me tell you how I meant to write it. Something like China becomes the 37th company to clear the Activision Blizzard acquisition, comma, says Microsoft, or just put an asterisk next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because to get to 37 countries, you have to count all of the countries that are members of the EU.
Oh,
See, they didn't individually okay this. This is how Microsoft reported it. I meant that to be sarcastic. I think the only thing I left in was a line where it's like Microsoft says that blah blah blah, and then I wrote or something, and I meant to follow it up, but I don't know what happened. I got not enough sleep that night. It's like you have this idea in your head, and then you finish the thing, and you look at it later, and you're like, oh wait, this isn't how I meant to write this. But yes, 30. I don't know how many member countries there are in the EU, but this is probably 20, high 20 somethings, maybe 30 even. But the number of regulators, regulation bodies, whatever you want to call them, that have approved it is probably 9 to 11, somewhere in there.
We're still waiting on two more. 10. So it's
that's the two most important ones. Yeah, well, two of the three most important ones.
I was gonna say, yeah. Also, Meta has found itself on the wrong end of an EU gavel and owes over $1 billion for.
Yeah, which is another thing I have to look up because it's described as a record fine by the EU, and we all know that Microsoft got fined an astronomical amount of money over time, and then Intel as well, although Intel eventually won on that one. But I don't know. I think if you factor in inflation, Microsoft still beats Meta. But I'm going to look that up. I'm curious. It was 1 point something billion for a Meta violating privacy. It seems like a slam dunk case because that's their business model.
Yep.
So yeah, leave it at that.
Yeah, that's. Of course, they are going to appeal it. The interesting thing, interesting in quotations here, is that they could have actually been fined more because they can be fined up to 4% of their global revenues or something like that. And this was underneath that threshold.
I mean, if it's the same as what Microsoft could have been sued for or charged with, I think it was 10%. It could even be higher. It was a really big chunk of change, whatever it was. But whatever, yeah, it's billions. I mean, and by the way, Meta is smart to appeal this because
why not?
Legal process in the EU takes. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg will be retired by then, living on an island somewhere that he owns, like a Dr. No villain from a James Bond movie. No one cares.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos' giant sailboat be going by it. He'll be lobbing grenades at it.
It should be just like what's the Pirates game that Microsoft has? Sea of Thieves. They should just be a billionaire expansion pack.
Right. They should do the Sea of Thieves Waterworld expansion pack. With actual Kevin Costner likeness.
He has gills behind the ears.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's kind of really Build kicks off tomorrow, correct?
Tomorrow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look. I don't think it's a shocker to suggest this is going to be a big deal because of all the AI stuff going on. I mean, you can look at the build session list yourself. There's actually some interesting looking Windows content, right? So we'll see what that looked like. But you can kind of go through and sort the list by. You can look up things like .NET AI, obviously cloud, Windows, whatever you're interested in. But I think this is going to be. This is their chance to make a splash now that the momentum is slowing down. Speaking of slowing momentum, by the way, I don't know. Did we talk about the Samsung thing? Did we ever mention this?
The Bing.
So they were looking into putting Bing on their phones. Everyone's like, oh, they can't do that. Like everyone has, exact knowledge of their agreement with Google, which always makes me laugh. But anyway, yeah, Bob.com can't do it. But, I think Samsung could, biggest OEM, et cetera. So the Wall Street Journal reported the other day that they're not going to do it anymore. And the reason is literally just the perception. Like their customers would be like, what are you doing? And it wouldn't really impact too many people. I mean, the initial deal would have been just to put it in that internet app they have, which is their browser, which is stupid, but they were looking at doing it for search just broadly across the phone as well. And if this could somehow have made sense for anybody, I could see Apple doing this too, right? I mean, you could just kind of that's how Bing, maybe the point of what Microsoft did with AI was to make Bing relevant for these things. Then that's how they really start the ball rolling or whatever. But it was basically just like, no, this thing's still a hot pile of garbage. I guess we're not doing that. So this is the problem they're always going to have, not to mention the fact that the Bing brand is tarnished forever. They should have called that thing Copilot, and that might have been a different story. It could have been called the Samsung Copilot on Samsung devices, and but I don't run PR at these companies, but that's how I would have handled it. I don't know.
We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, not.
Maybe. I mean,
not tomorrow.
Or not the Bing thing. I was thinking the AI stuff. That's a Monday.
Whatever.